Hello, everybody. Welcome. This is Bart Sharp, and you are on Becoming Quantum Conscious at United Public Radio Network and UFO Paranormal Radio Network at 107.7 and 103.5, broadcasting out of the beautiful city of New Orleans, Louisiana. Imagine it's all humid and rainy there, just like it's almost going to rain in Austin, Texas, but it's not quite. And being a seventh generation Texan that I am, and maybe farther back because I'm Comanche, we always look for rain and look forward to it. And just my salutations for nurturing the earth and having that harmony with the earth, which really brings us to this guest we have today, Sean Patrick Maher. The life you are resonating in the vibrational universe and its applications. Yeah, this is just as right as rain, as they say. Welcome to the show. Yes. Well, it's right as rain to have you on the show because I'm a big believer in sound activations. And notice I'm not saying sound healing. A lot of people like to say that. But to me, healing says that there's something wrong and it needs to come to correction or healing, and you're healed. And to me, it's more like, no, we want activations to where we're transformed and that balance happens. So they have Sean Patrick Maher here, who is, for the, a very minimal description, is to say that he is a conceptualist. He thinks big. He is being very daring and doing sound activations. So I'm going to start the show with a bio. We'll go simple and then we're going to get complex. Soma Live, this is Sean's company, was born from a singular realization that the human body is not solid matter, but a symphony of frequencies. That's what I'm talking about. When these frequencies fall out of tune due to stress, trauma, or modern life, our potential remains dormant. Our founder, Sean Patrick Maher, spent decades exploring the intersection of somatic therapy, sound healing, and neuroscience. He envisioned a technology that wouldn't just relax the user, but fundamentally retune their biological instrument. I just love it. And Sean sent me this paragraph of what to explore, and I think it's kind of a great opening to just jump into this. I'm expecting a daring hour or 55 minutes. So he says, this is what I got. I would love to discuss the paradigm of the vibrational universe and its application in healing and transformation, an exploration into how every vibrational influence, including our internal state and beliefs, shape the world around us, and how adjusting that frequency literally changes our lives. This is represented on every level of human being, and yet when we address the root of the frequency and create harmony in the system, we can produce amazing results of healing and transformation, ultimately setting the stage for stepping into our full potential and actualization. All in sound activation. It's just, to me, it's just amazing. Welcome to the show, Sean.
Thank you so much for having me, Bart. It's great to be here.
Yeah, and like I told him earlier, he's got the radio voice, not me.
Blame the microphone.
So where should we start with this? I mean, to me, when you say something in this, it's like we're changing the body, but it almost insinuates that we're also changing everything around us when we change.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think you mentioned earlier that I'm a conceptualist, and that feels really true. I've never actually been called that before, but I see things in certain ways, and the way that I understand ourselves, the universe, and connection there is as a fractal and as a
Mhm.
hologram. So when anything adjusts in one field, then it impacts all the fields. And so that to me is how we can, the initial framework of conceptualizing how when we change something inside, it changes outside. And equally, how something outside of us changes, it changes us inside. We're not separate from anything. We only have the perception that we are in many ways.
And so sound frequencies can begin to change the inner and outer world.
Hmm.
And so many of us would go, well, sound healing, sound activations. We think of crystal balls,
Hmm.
tuning forks, and at the same time, we're talking about much more than that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, frequency, when we talk about sound frequency, we tend to think of that as different from light or different from other types of frequencies. But the way that I understand it and have come to understand it is that frequency is what everything is. And we only see different spectrums of that frequency, including physical matter, light frequencies, sound frequencies. And my chosen path was sound frequency, not just for the fact that it's beautiful and fun, but it's also, it touches us on a level that, say, light doesn't necessarily touch us. It can touch us on an emotional level, it can touch us on a spiritual level. Sound and music is part of almost every spirituality in the world. Worship music and praise music is everywhere. And so, not only that, but we can actually transform those sound waves into tactile experiences, which is what we've done at Soma Live, is focus on how not only do you hear the sound, but you get to feel the sound vibrating through your entire body. And that has big implications in terms of its impact on the nervous system and on our well-being and on the kind of the biological system that kind of precipitates from the fact that we're actually frequency based. So the chemistry and the biology all come from our frequency levels versus the other way around, which is one of the more bold ideas at this point.
And it's also an important idea. And I think for a lot of people, it's a progression in that they may start hearing these sounds and frequencies through their ears, and then maybe they feel their heart feel better. But it starts to grow to where the body is becomes a space
Mm.
in different frequencies, vibrations, energies. I'm using all the words Tesla uses. Um, we start to become aware of them at more subtle levels.
Mhm.
And how much of that is the growth in how you can use sound activations?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The subtleties. It's like when we quiet the noise. And this is the interesting thing, is like we do have a body centric kind of device, and the way that we approach things is merging the different parts of ourselves. So
Mm-hmm.
one of the things that we see a lot in like the psychotherapy space is it's all mind based. When we see it in other spaces, it's very body based, if you look at fitness and things like that. But when we start to operate on all the levels, it starts to mix together in a better way. We start to realize that even our thoughts are penetrating every cell of our body. Our feelings are being echoed and resonated in all those ways. So we wanted to come at it from a top-down approach and a bottom-up. So it's not just the space that we're creating in the body, but the process that we actually take somebody through in a Z5 experience session is to also transform the way that we're thinking about things, the way that we're believing things, the way that we're seeing the world literally begins to change both our own biology and our interaction with the world around us. And I think it's really important to recognize that we have to create space both in the body, but also in the mind to open up new corridors for connection. And that subtlety, when we quiet all that noise, begins to show itself more.
Yes. And what some people may not realize is that those little monkey brain thoughts you have, or negative thoughts, or thoughts that you just wish would shut up, or always are like your little friend beside you talking away.
Mm-hmm.
They're all sound frequencies.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so they're all in there. That was an interesting little
It
interaction.
was sound frequencies, as it were. Oh,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And is that voice our friend, um, or is it tearing us down? And so many times that little voice that we're hearing is so negative. I mean, and that's
Mhm.
that's a natural phenomenon. I mean, that's just how we've actually survived, as a human species. We needed to operate based on fear. Don't go into the shadow because you might be eaten by a cougar or something, right?
Mhm.
And yet
So
we're at,
true. It's so true.
I mean, absolutely, and that's how we survived. But now we're at a place where perhaps we can explore, instead of living and learning to live out of survival, what does it mean to actually learn to live out of thrival? How can we actually move into a space where we're learning to use the power of our mind and our heart at the same time, and clearing a pathway for that? And that's what these activations are really about. It's like clearing out the old is kind of step one. And then step two is now what we're creating and moving our awareness away from the problems that we might be having, but learning to maintain a higher kind of state of awareness, even in the troubled times that we inevitably face in our lives, and certainly as a species and as a planet. But we're much more powerful when we steer our awareness, both in our feelings, our thoughts, and even the beliefs that are precipitating the latter. That's where the power really is. And I think for many of us, we feel a little bit lost in that space. It's hard to regain control almost, or at least sway over the thoughts that come through our little heads.
Yeah, I think our thoughts and stuff that we do not seem to not have a choice whether they show up or not.
Mm,
People come up with a judgment, which is the first thing you shouldn't do, that something is wrong with them.
yeah.
And then they start to get frustrated with it. They either want to numb it or keep busy or fight against it. And your approach sounds more like an exploration,
Mm,
that you're not trying to label it or go back into the psychological therapy,
mhm.
but maybe you can just start to go into the nervous system, the internal organs, to see what they're holding, to see how you can interact with those.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it also has to do with kind of transcending duality. I think in many ways we tend to focus ourselves on right or wrong, good or bad, light or dark.
Mm-hmm.
And one of our stated visions for our work and the work that I'm doing in the world is this idea of elevating consciousness. And the reason I call it that, or kind of frame it in that way, is not to say this idea of a higher frequency or a higher vibration. It's actually about the idea that when we're operating from this duality, one of the things that I do with my clients is, any problem is basically representative of a duality that they're experiencing. Maybe it's something that they don't want in their life, or something's wrong, or this is a problem. But when we begin to elevate our consciousness, we move into a different frame of awareness. And when we move into that different frame of awareness, we can look back at what we perceived as a duality and realize how it's just one continuum. And that duality isn't necessarily between two things that exist. It's actually between a thing that exists and non-existence. In other words, darkness is only the absence of light. So the idea that darkness is a thing in and of itself, opposed from
Mhm.
the idea that light is just absent from that space. That's when we can raise up and realize, well, how can I bring more light to that space, or whatever the process may be. So it's really about raising out of the dualities into a space where we can actually solve a problem from a new state of consciousness, to realize that there actually wasn't a problem to begin with. And most of the problems that we're experiencing have more to do with the way that we're looking at what's happening, the way that we're
Mm.
perceiving the situation is creating and generating more of the problems, and ultimately more other problems downline, because that's the energy that we're promoting and spreading into the field around us and permeating through our whole being. That's what we're operating from. So we get more of that. We're just magnetizing more of that energy.
And so you're talking about repressed emotions held in the body that may be the source of creating that darkness. Am I getting you
Absolutely.
right?
That's one of the pieces. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's one of the maybe major pieces, especially for falling into the dark spirals, and it keeps going downward, and we do all the things, and we're trying to think good thoughts, and it's not really working. That usually does point to something that's held inside. And it's a fascinating little trick, because
Yeah.
on one hand, it's we are emotional beings, right? We're going to have these
Mhm.
emotions, but it's when they aren't fully expressed in real time that we have to shove them down somewhere, we have to stuff them somewhere, and then we just go on living ourselves kind of splintered, or half of ourselves or some portion is missing because we're not fully activated in that space. So part of it is
Yeah.
going in and unraveling those pieces. But then in real time, it's like, what I also tend to see happen is people will grab a hold of their emotions, they'll identify with them fully and become them completely. And I was thinking about this the other day, reading this great book, the body. No, it's not the Body Electric. I'm not sure which one it is, but it's one of Eileen Day McCusick's books, and she was talking about the language around feeling. And from the romantic languages, they say, I am, I am having a feeling, like I'm having sadness. Versus in Germanic languages, it's I am feeling, I am sad. So the
Mhm.
difference is the identification with this feeling. And this is what we do in real time. We identify with it. I am angry, I am sad, right? Well, now
Mhm.
we're like really claiming that this is who we are, instead of recognizing that this is a passing feeling, and we can allow ourselves to feel that, not grab a hold of it, not grab our hooks into it, not let it hook us. And then we can let it move through us and come back into a different state, if we choose. If we choose.
It reminds me of what I commonly see in movies and television, in that you'll have these characters, not all characters, but the the troubled souls, so to speak, that had, a tragedy.
Mm,
Either they were in war or they were abused.
yeah.
There's something that they always refer back to
Mm,
that gives them this enormous amount of anger,
hmm.
and it could be fear,
Yeah.
but then they spring forth as the hero, taking that past and going and fighting another fight,
Hmm.
and with the belief that, well, if they just kick that other person's butt, their trauma's gonna get resolved.
Right.
But as you and I have learned, and therapists and other people teach us, no, you're just recreating it again.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's still going to be those traumatized people. They may feel freedom for a short time, but it's not the long-term solution.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, that's still operating from the duality. It's and
Yeah.
and for me, that I don't necessarily wrong that in any way. It's a very reasonable um, way to to try to heal, to try to rectify. We want to try to clean it up. I mean, this is what you see in a lot of relationships. Relationships, and especially in our intimate relationship, we tend to recreate our experience with our parents. In our
Yes.
relationship, there's a
That's right.
desire for catharsis there. But when we're not conscious of how we're doing that, we tend to just generate the same experience again, instead of choosing something new, choosing a different approach to it. And it makes a lot of sense that I know I've done this a lot myself, and I came up with a lot of grief, and I still, it's like it's there's still those tendrils there. I'm not one of these folks that thinks like we're going to move through all of this and it's never going to show again. In fact, I tend to believe that our life operates in sort of spirals, and so like if you're looking down at a spiral, you'll notice, you'll pass over, say, the 12 o'clock mark, every time
Mm-hmm.
you loop, right? So you're still going to touch that piece again, but but if you turn back the spiral and look at the side, you realize you're spiraling up or you're spiraling down. It's really up to you which direction you go. And our goal is to help people spiral up.
I love that analogy because I really get it. Every time you hit the 12 o'clock or that past trauma,
Hmm.
you know, it is going to come back. But the next time it's going to be much louder, lighter, and you're
Yeah,
going to be detached. But it's still in your neurology. It's
absolutely.
just you're not repeating it
Yeah,
again and again, and you're not triggered to do so
right.
abruptly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I tend to think of those as sort of our birthright in a certain way. As human beings on this planet and at this time, some of those, especially, you hear this a lot from people, and this is actually my story as well, transcending the challenges that were, part of who we were growing up or part of our growing up process became the pathway for the work that we end up doing in the world. So to
Yeah.
take them away, to not have them to begin with, is maybe a crime in a certain way. Perhaps the goal that we're actually, here to fulfill is to recognize that we do have the power and the agency to rise, to meet these challenges in a new way and actually transform them into something that's life-giving versus life-taking.
Yes, that's wonderful. And it really just, you know, it just sounds like well, let me ask this in a question. Do you work with a lot of people that are going through some sort of psychotherapy, or they're doing Al Anon, or they're doing forms of counseling, or they're just on that road of personal discovery of their past and they want something to, they want a somatic tool?
Yeah, well, it's a bit of both. I mean, these days, well, at least in the circles that I run in, everybody is doing something for their
Mm-hmm.
betterment.
Yeah.
Psychotherapy, somatic therapies, 12-step program, whatever it is. Those things are there, and I think it really just comes down to a person seeking to live a better life because ultimately,
Yeah.
what we do isn't necessary. It's not psychotherapy. Obviously, we're going to dread, some things are going to come up from the past, but our focus is really here and forward. And in the same way, that a psychotherapist would go and they dig into the old wounds and we talk about those things, right? And that transforms here and now moving forward. If we live in the holographic universe, then we actually recognize that if we change something now and forward, it'll actually change the representation of that backwards
Mm,
too.
yeah.
That's one of the Lakota kind of philosophies, which is one of the spaces that I came up in, and years ago doing a lot of Lakota work. And the blessings that you pray are for 7 generations forward and 7 generations back. So time is not this linear thing. It's all mixed together in a certain way. You can impact any aspect of it. So when we're working, we really want to focus on where are we now and where do we want to go, and maybe what stories we're carrying from before. But we're not going to necessarily go back and tell me the story, because we don't want to keep telling those stories anymore. We want to reframe them. We want to have a different experience, and then we want to get that into the body in a deeper way, because this is the other thing that happens in psychotherapy. We talk a lot and it's a lot of like stories and it's up here, but then what do you do with it? So we actually take that and we create a new belief, and then we run it into the body, and we run it deep into the subconscious when we drop into those parasympathetic states, and we drop into the kind of lower brainwave states when we're really suggestible. We're able to feed that back into the system and create a new vibratory experience moving forward, so that our forward life is actually a new experience altogether.
It's like rocket science when you think of therapy, because went through somatic therapy, and we were feeling all the stories that happened in my life, and I was, of course, would walk out of the sessions almost in a type of shock, because I
Yeah.
was really feeling my body once again how it felt to be this abused child,
Yeah.
and all of that trauma's there, and I'm just like, well, that's great to feel it, and I know it's a progression, but what's next?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's the question that I needed to have answered in the work that I'm doing, because I've studied a lot of therapeutic approaches and psychotherapy, and I have, a wall full of certifications and all that stuff. But when I got really down to it, that's what I started to notice. If I'm letting myself go back into that old story, and I'm not changing the story, or not changing my awareness, or not de-identifying from it, not shifting into something new, then in some ways the danger of that is re-traumatizing. We're actually
Yeah,
pushing that feeling further in, and resonating that feeling more. So there it's like this fine line, because there's something great about going back and being able to release that emotion. But if we don't replace it with something new, then our pathways that we've grooved for all these years, having lived with that vibrational frequency, we're just going to slide right back in. It's just we're going to plug something else in there that fills that perfect gap, if we don't create a new pathway for life to flow through.
as you said, you're hitting that 12 o'clock section on that downward spiral.
Right. Yeah.
Whereas, it really brings up this curiosity when you're up on that upper spiral and you're hitting those 12 o'clocks and you're really detaching from all of this stuff. How does love come into this quotient?
Oh my God. Great question. Well, this is interesting, because when I'm taking my clients through the process, one thing that I say is, what we're going to do is become first. We're going to give awareness to what is. So the first step in changing anything, the first step on going on in any direction on a map, say for instance, is to know where you're starting. You can't know where to go if you don't know where you're starting. So we have to have awareness for that, right? That awareness then becomes acceptance. We have to also accept that this is where we are, and if we're not, and this is a bit of a linear process. If we don't acknowledge where we are, we can't accept where we are. If we can't accept where we are, we can't continue to move down the pathway, which is to actually have gratitude for where we are, actually recognize that we can actually be so grateful for what occurred or what is occurring. And I'm not saying that this is easy by any means, because some things that happen are absolutely horrific to people, for sure. But in some ways, we can find some pieces of gratitude, and eventually down that pathway, we can move into love. We can come back into union with the fullness of the universe, with the fullness of God, of this, reality that we're in, and recognize that everything is actually perfect. And that's a stretch for some people, but in my belief, that's actually what love is the full acceptance of what is. That's pure love.
Mm,
Even when I'm loving somebody and they're a challenge for me, how can I love them more for who they are fully, even if it's rubbing me the wrong way, or even if I'm getting frustrated, right? Then I'm falling out of love a little bit. But when I come back into love, when I get into acknowledging what is, accepting what is, having gratitude for what is, I can find my way back to loving what actually is. And I got to tell you, that just feels way better to me. That's just the place that I want. I just want to live a life that feels good. And that one sounds way better to me
yeah.
than really any other option.
Well, one of my teachers said at one time, the the adrenal glands are the organs for those unconscious, because
Hmm.
they're always into trauma, they're into anger, they're into fear or sadness or shame or others all the time. and they're telling stories about that. They're resonating stories. They pick their spiritual leaders, their politicians, everything next to that frequency.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so we're right at the midpoint. So I want to hang on to that thought and tell everybody that you are on Becoming Quantum Conscious, and my name is Bart Sharp, and my guest today is Sean Patrick Maher of the somalive.com. And you are on United Public Radio Network and UFO Paranormal Radio Network at 107.7 and 103.5 out in New Orleans, Louisiana. And Sean, before we go any farther, do you want to just tell people some of the things you're doing out in the world? What's happening with you?
Yeah, you mean
about the Z5 experience?
yeah,
If you so
absolutely.
dare.
Absolutely. I'm as you mentioned, I like to be daring. Yeah, so my company is Somalive Technologies. We have our flagship product is called the Z5 experience. It's a full body somatic sound therapy experience. It's fully immersive. There's 6 different tactile transducers, a full music library, and we also have trainings for teaching practitioners to use this as a tool with their clients. We, primarily focus on wellness centers, spas, sports recovery, addiction recovery. There's a lot of different spaces that the Z5 can be used. We have another product coming called the Z1, which is going to be a personal use product with an app, so we can do more home use, because the Z5 is a very large device. It's kind of a higher level clinical grade device. And then we also do sessions with clients. We have the opportunity for people to have experiences of this in terms of a practitioner led experience, and training around that. I'm also writing a book about all of this. It's actually called The Life You're Resonating. That's the working title of the book, so it works that we're talking about that today. But that's the work that I've really focused on. You can, and just to plug that, you can find it at somalive.com. You can read more about that, about the work that we're doing with Somalive, and it's been very exciting. We're getting a lot of great traction with some big brands and big names, around the world. And in fact, we're going back to the TED conference in April again. We've been invited back, so apparently we're getting some positive love.
Well, it's sound activation has so many different levels, and this seems to be getting real specific as you're getting more specific. You're dealing with things like the vagal nerve,
Yes,
internal organs, where we hold all of these limitations in our beliefs. People say, well, it's in your head, but it's a whole body experience.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, trauma can't be stored in our head. It has to go somewhere, especially when we are young and we have awful things happen to us, things that we don't have the capacity at the time to manage or make sense of. We have to put that somewhere, and it oftentimes does go in the body. And there's a lot of, I mean, this was kind of a fringe concept for a long time, but it's actually starting to be uptaken into even the medical spaces, that there's an emotional component to degenerative diseases, and different immune diseases.
Immunities. Yes.
Yeah.
There's
So
all I can say is like, duh. But,
right. I mean,
we always known it, but it's kind of like, oh, we can do this with a machine that actually just transforms people. And people have been opening with this vibrational technology, whether you're listening to crystal bowls and it's taking you into a deeper state. What I'm gathering from you is that you can actually pinpoint a lot of this stuff too.
Yeah, and well, that's the primary work of a practitioner. and working with the client. And one of the things that we want to really, that we're speaking to a lot, is we want to look at this as an empowerment process, a personal
Mm-hmm.
empowerment process. So one of the things that we've done in the past as a society is we've handed off our well-being to the powers that be, so to speak. We've entrusted doctors and others with our well-being, and trusted them to be the absolute authority on what's happening in our lives. And in many ways, there's been so many benefits to that, and it's been wonderful. And then there's always a shadow, right? There's
Mm-hmm.
always where the light's
Mm-hmm.
not quite reaching. And so one of the things that we really focus on is re-empowering people to recognize that they have more control and impact on their well-being and experience than they've necessarily realized. And so it's yes, we have a device that allows them to have these experiences, but one of the key ingredients to this for the really deep transformation, because you can get a lot from just going and having a Z5 experience. You'd spend 15, 30, 45 minutes on the Z5. You will feel a transformation. You'll feel better. You'll feel
Mm-hmm.
lighter. I've watched it in people's faces. They get on in one state and it's like a different person getting off. Well,
Yeah.
the thing that I'm most excited about is the process that we take them through. These sessions can be, up to 2 hours long, and you're only spending 30 or 45 minutes on the Z5 itself. The rest of the time, the practitioner is actually taking you through a process of understanding yourself better,
Mm-hmm.
understanding what's the core truth that you're operating from, the truth that you've decided is true, the decision that you've made, the belief that you've held, and what's a new, better belief. And then embodying that in a new way and realizing that the person themselves is the person embodying that belief. Nobody's doing it for them. The device is
Mm-hmm.
helping them, is supporting that process. But ultimately, the transformation is coming from within. That's where it's all coming from.
This is so cool. I'm thinking of, I have a set of tuning forks and I use them. I like them,
Mm-hmm.
but I've not put all the ingredients together and how to use them optimally.
Yeah.
So if I took a 174 frequency, which they say is to eradicate pain in the body, I
Mm-hmm.
believe I'm correct, and I ping it and I bring it close to my knee, which might be hurting, I'm not getting the results that my pain goes away.
Mm.
And what you're saying is there's just so many other ingredients. The 174 does have that potential, but I'm missing some parts.
Yeah, it very well could be. Yeah. I mean, in some frameworks, pure frequencies have this ability to do different things. We do use pure frequencies in some of our, tracks and experiences, but there's a lot more to sound, and then there's a lot more to the intentionality of how we're using the sound that
Mm,
becomes so important. And that's the piece that I, again, am most excited about, because sound is just a carrier of information in this way, and we're seeding the information that we're choosing to carry into our bodies, into our fields. um, and so sometimes it does take more than that, especially if that pain in your knee, depending on which side of the body it is, it could have to do with your, patriarchal line or your matriarchal line. It could have to do with a lot of different things that haven't been moved yet. But the other thing that I like to mention is that not everything is ready to be moved today. When I'm bringing a client in with my work, one of the first questions I ask is, what's the what's the fruit that feels ripe to be picked?
mm,
Because that's the most important. Like, what is happening now? Of course, for anybody doing a lot of personal work on themselves, if somebody asks what are your things that you're dealing with, they probably have a list. They probably, well, my father was this way, my mother was this happened, right? But what was triggered today, what was triggered this morning? That's the one we want to focus on. And any of these become the pathway in. There's no right answer, there's no wrong answer. There's just
yeah,
openings, and then we go as deep as we possibly can.
you're
So
backtracking.
yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. So Bart, whenever you're ready, we can do a session for you and
Okay,
get
well,
that
well,
knee
thank
straightened
you.
out.
I appreciate that. Uh, just another question. I mean, when we've dealt a lot in going to traumas, which, it's one of my favorite topics to
Mhm.
unravel all of this stuff. Uh, you've been doing this stuff for quite a while.
Yeah.
How has it changed your life?
Wow. What a great
I know that's
question.
a big question.
I mean, it's a great one. It's a fun one.
Yeah, but it's a hard one because it's like, well, let me count the ways.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, in in every imaginable way, it has changed my life. I was introduced. Really, if I look back, I can tell that I was already doing this, kind of unconsciously when I was a child, and listening to music to kind of get away from the chaos of my household. And
Hmm.
so I was already using music as a way to calm myself down. I just didn't know what I was doing. But I've been in this field for 20 years, and I would say that everything in my life is different because of it. The trauma release experiences that I've had, the transformations that I've had, the way I see the world, my experience in the world, and then of course the way I get to impact the world. I mean, my whole life's work is what we're talking about here today. So for me, it's everything. That there's no way to quantify, or to pluck out the specificities per se. But what I will say is that I feel that I live a really beautiful life. I love my
Mm,
life. I love waking up. I feel grateful. I feel blessed. And life still brings challenges. I mean, that's what life is. There's still
yeah,
challenges in life all the time, but they don't take me over as they did once. I have a different perception. I have a different
yeah.
perspective, and I'm able to navigate that in a new way. And I'm so deeply grateful that I was given this gift, and that I was given the gift of being able to share it with the world. And that's all I really want to do at this point in my life, is just share this with as many people as I possibly can, and support transforming other people's lives in any way that they would like.
Yeah, and it's a golden egg that just isn't laid in your lap. It starts in the frequency that you
Yeah,
keep cultivating.
right.
It's kind of like when somebody's saying, "Well, you got a lot to look forward to, Bart. You're a tour guide in Southwest France. You got a radio show, and you got this and this and this, and a new pickup truck." And it was like, no, the space inside of me attracted that in.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
didn't even have a map of where I wanted to go.
Mhm, mhm.
They just start appearing, and maybe the one thing is that you make a decision to step forward, or you make a decision not to step forward.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely. To answer the call or not. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it changes all areas of your life. It sounds like.
It absolutely does. It's funny. It kind of reminds me. My mom at one point in my life said I live a charmed life. Because I've done a lot of really cool things. I've gotten to do a lot of really amazing things with this life, and I'm very grateful for that. But when she told me that, I remember thinking about it and being like, I worked really hard to get to this level of charmed life. And like, it took effort, and it continues to take effort every single day. It's like,
Yeah,
again, I don't like to think of things as like, okay, I've solved that and now it's done. It's like, no, this is more of a practice. It's an everyday
yeah.
practice. But now we have all these tools that can streamline this practice and make it so much more readily available to us. And it does become easier and easier and easier as you go, because you're creating new neural pathways. You're creating a new rhythm, a new frequency, a new vibration for your life, and it just continues to grow and grow and grow, just like it did when we were in the darkness. It would continue to grow and grow and grow. And it does take the courage and the fortitude to take ownership of our lives in that way, to really stand up and take responsibility for everything that's happening here. Take 100%
Mm,
responsibility for it. Even though things happen to us, we choose what happens next in terms of
mm.
how we engage with the world, regardless of what has happened before.
So to get really personal, how does your neurological system feel now that you've done all of this work, now that you've done the Z5 and other things? And extend that a little bit. Also, how's your heart changed?
Yeah. So I am a human being who experiences stress. You know? Who experiences there are times when I'm having stress and I'm having sadness or I'm having anger or frustration, right? But to me, the pathway it's so slanted in the other direction now. I'm so slanted towards moving out of those quickly, moving into a new state quickly. That's the neurological piece for me. Is it's so rapid now. And you can ask my partner. There are plenty of times when I'm feeling some stress, I'm feeling some concern, but there's so many tools available to move through. I was feeling
Yeah.
a little stressed this morning and I did a Z5 session and I felt great afterwards. And it's like, okay, here it is. Here's these tools. But when you ask about my heart, I just have a deep love. I have a deep love and a deep care for people, and it's also, and I have a good set of boundaries. I know how to boundary myself in a good way, and that's part of love. Actually, that's part of loving is to be well boundaried. I don't overgive of myself, but
Yeah.
I want to serve and I want to give back. And when I see things happening in the world, which by and large I try not to look at too much because I want to shape my pathways towards what I want to see, not what I don't want to see. And so much of what we're fed in the world today is the things that we don't want to see, um,
Yep.
and that we really want to be frank, shouldn't be seeing.
Yeah.
Um,
It's not pretty.
it's not pretty out there, but I want to do everything I can to serve as much as I can. That I think from a heart centered space, and this is what I see in almost everybody that has gone through major transformations. They almost inevitably find some way to give back. They want to give the gift that they found. It's almost like the hero's journey. We want to
Yep.
find a way to bring it back to the village and give it back to the people. And
Mm.
that's I think what it has done in terms of transforming my heart.
I think this is a true form of people that have stepped up in that consciousness
Mm.
is how much do they give to other people
Yeah.
and that desire? Because when you cross over to that higher form of love, that is one of the things that pops up. And you'll
Mm.
see people that may be a pillar of intellectual strength in the area of spirituality, healing, et cetera, et cetera. But then you start looking at their life and, they're going to Hollywood parties or something. Uh, and they're not doing the things that change their community or
Yeah.
change something in the world.
Yeah.
It's like a telltale sign of who's evolved and who's not evolved.
Yeah, it's kind of like that thing, when you're going to do business with somebody, or you're going to, go and, make a deal with somebody or something like that. It's like go to a restaurant with them, see how they treat the person serving
Mm,
the meal. Because oftentimes we think of this, and even the work that I do, I talk a lot about serving creators and visionaries, right? But I don't necessarily mean people that are trying to do massive global change. It can be local. It's how do we treat the person at the red light or at the gas station or at the grocery store? How do we
yes.
actually begin to live that frequency of light and love to where it doesn't matter what interaction we have or not even have one, just walking past somebody, we're
Indeed.
sending that energy out in a new way, and that changes things. It truly does change things. We tend to think that what is that going to do, but it does everything. And again, if
Yeah.
we live in the holographic fractal universe, then every little feeling and every little interaction ripples out into the cosmos in every direction. And that's
And
the
that
impact I believe that every person can have.
and I think that's the beauty of sound activations is we are interacting with that holographic universe.
Yes.
Things are coming into us and they're doing all of these things. We may have gotten it down to some scientific logic of what affects what, as you do in your trainings. Uh, but it's also it's this huge internal big picture.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah, I just wanted to say just on that real quick. What's one thing that I always like to say is we always like to leave room for the mystery, because
um,
we can think we know all the things and figure it all out and we have it all logically deduced, but at the end of the day, there are things that are happening that we can't always understand fully. And I don't know if we're actually meant to understand fully. We have to leave room for the miraculous, for the miracles to happen.
mm,
When we leave
mm,
room for miracles to happen and when we believe they can happen, they will and they do.
they do. And I wanted to throw this question in real fast. If you weren't using the Z5 or the Z1 experience from Soma Live, what other forms of sound activations and tools would you say would be good to use? And we got about 2 minutes for this.
So, what I would say is that almost every single person born on this planet has a powerful tool of sound that they were born with, and it is their voice. It's the words
Mm,
they speak, it's the sounds they make, and vocal toning is accessible to every single person. So every person listening to this right now has the ability to use their own voice to shift frequencies inside of themselves. And what's super extra, super duper powerful about that is our intention is automatically attached to those frequencies that we emit through our voice. That's what sound is. That's what voice, that's what speaking is. We've agreed on these words that we're using, right? We've agreed that this is this word and it means this, and we're having a conversation now. But at the end of the day, I'm just making strange noises with my voice and transmitting a signal to you, and you're hearing it and interpreting it, and we're having a conversation, right? So what we can do is actually use our sound consciously. And this is something I do all the time when I'm walking through the day, because I might not have time to get on the Z or have time to sit down with the Z1 or whatever it is. But I can start humming deep inside of my chest or deep inside of my body. And I can feel that resonance massaging my internal organs, much like the Z5 does. And
mm,
then it begins to shift things there. And then I can choose to use my voice to harmonize my field if I want. I can use my intention and my activation within and use my voice to send that message out with sound waves that are literally interacting with the field around me physically, and begins to change everything that's happening within and without. So that
yes.
to me is the most easily accessible way to transform and to use sound.
Wow. That's a good answer. Wow, that could be like your message for the world type of thing, which it's coming up because we got 2 minutes left. So you think about one last message for 1 minute, and I will tell everybody that you are listening to Sean Patrick Mayer of somalive.com with the Z5 experience and doing all kinds of sessions, trainings, of course, selling these wonderful machines with sound activations. My name is Bart Sharp, and you are on Becoming Quantum Conscious. Next week, we have Ani Williams with Guardians of the Dragon Path. And just in case you've forgotten, you are on United Public Radio Network and UFO Paranormal Radio Network at 107.7 and 103.5. What last wisdom you got for us, Sean?
Oh, how do I distill everything? I think the piece that's most important to me is I want to say that every person is beautiful. Every person is a gift. Every person is powerful and capable. And we all have impact in this world. We can all change our lives. It doesn't matter what has happened, what is happening. No matter what your situation is, we can transform it. We can step forward. We can re empower ourselves. We can reinvigorate our lives. And this life is simply too beautiful and amazing to forgive me for saying, waste by struggling and hurting and suffering.
Yes.
Suffering is not necessary, and we can transform it.
Wonderful ending. We'll see everybody next week. Thank you so much, Sean Patrick.
Thank you, Bart. Appreciate you.